never expected that a routine morning hike would change my life forever. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 47, I thought I'd seen everything the Arizona wilderness could offer. I was wrong. It was early March, and the desert was just beginning to shake off winter's chill. I'd been walking the trail behind my small ranch for about an hour when I heard it. A sound so faint I almost missed it. A tiny, desperate cry echoing from somewhere among the rocks. I followed the sound to a shallow cave tucked beneath an outcropping of red sandstone. What I found there made my heart shatter into pieces. A bobcat cub, no more than a few weeks old, lay trembling beside his dead mother. She'd been hit by something, maybe a car on the nearby highway, maybe another predator. However it happened, she'd managed to drag herself here before dying, trying to protect her baby until the very end. The cub was so small he fit in my cupped hands. His eyes were barely open, his spotted fur matted with dirt. He made that heartbreaking cry again, searching blindly for his mother's warmth. I knew I should call wildlife services, knew there were proper channels for this sort of thing. But looking at that tiny, helpless creature, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. "It's okay, little one," I whispered, tucking him gently inside my jacket against my chest. "You're safe now. I've got you." His crying stopped almost immediately as he felt my warmth. His tiny paws kneaded against my shirt, and I felt something shift in my heart. I'd been alone since my divorce 3 years ago, my grown children living states away. This little fighter needed me. I decided right then, I would save him. Getting the cub home was the easy part. Keeping him alive proved far more challenging than I'd imagined. I named him Scout, after his adventurous spirit that had somehow kept him breathing despite the odds. The first night was terrifying. I'd quickly researched bobcat care online, learning that cubs this young needed feeding every 2 to 3 hours. I drove to the nearest pet store and bought kitten milk replacement formula, bottles, and heating pads. My dining room became a makeshift nursery. Scout was so weak he could barely suckle. I had to dribble milk into his mouth drop by drop, praying he'd swallow. His body was cold despite the heating pad, and I wrapped him in soft towels, holding him against me for hours. I didn't sleep that night, terrified I'd wake to find him gone. But Scout was a fighter. By morning, he was nursing more strongly, his tiny body gaining a bit of warmth and energy. His eyes, still cloudy with newborn blindness, would flutter as he drank. I felt an overwhelming surge of protective love. This tiny wild creature was depending entirely on me. I called my daughter Emma that morning. "Mom, you did what?" she asked, her voice torn between concern and amazement. "You can't just keep a bobcat. It's probably illegal." She was right, of course. But I'd already contacted a wildlife rehabilitator named Marcus who lived 2 hours away. He'd agreed to help me care for Scout properly, with the goal of eventually releasing him back to the wild. It was legal as long as I was working under Marcus's rehabilitation license. "I know it's crazy," I told Emma, "but I couldn't leave him there to die. He's so small, so helpless." "I know, Mom," she said softly. "That's who you are. Just be careful, okay?" The weeks that followed were exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Scout's eyes fully opened, revealing the most beautiful amber color I'd ever seen. He was curious about everything, wobbling around on unsteady legs, exploring every corner of the large pen I'd built in my spare bedroom. Marcus visited weekly, teaching me everything I needed to know. "The most important thing," he stressed, "is not to let him become too domesticated. He needs to retain his wild instincts if he's ever going to survive on his own." It was harder than it sounds. Scout was so affectionate, purring like a little motor when I held him, rubbing his face against mine. He'd curl up in my lap while I read, his soft spotted fur warm against my hands. It would have been so easy to treat him like a house cat, but I knew that would be a death sentence for him in the wild. So I followed Marcus's instructions carefully. I fed Scout whole prey items, mice and chicks, to maintain his hunting instincts. I created enrichment activities, hiding food so he'd have to search for it. I limited my direct interaction, though every fiber of my being wanted to cuddle him constantly. Scout grew rapidly. By 2 months, he was already showing the powerful build that would characterize him as an adult. His ear tufts became more pronounced, and his spotted coat grew thick and beautiful. He was stunning, wild and perfect in every way. My neighbor, old Tom Henderson, thought I was crazy. "That thing's gonna turn on you one day," he'd warn whenever he saw me carrying Scout outside for supervised exploration. "Wild animals ain't pets, Sarah." "I know that, Tom," I'd reply patiently. "That's why I'm preparing him for release." But privately, I wondered if I'd be able to let him go. By 4 months, Scout was a force of nature, He'd transformed from a helpless infant into a sleek, powerful young bobcat with boundless energy. His playfulness knew no limits. He'd pounce on anything that moved, practicing the hunting skills that were hardwired into his DNA. I'd converted my entire backyard into a large, secure enclosure, complete with trees for climbing, rocks for perching, and hiding spots for stalking imaginary prey. Scout spent his days out there, and I'd watch him for hours through my kitchen window, marveling at his grace and power. But every evening, he'd come to the door of the enclosure and make a specific chirping sound, his way of calling for me. And despite Marcus's warnings, despite knowing better, I'd go out and sit with him. Scout would climb into my lap, purring loudly, grooming my hair with his rough tongue. These were the moments when the line between wild animal and companion blurred dangerously. "You're getting too attached," Marcus warned during one of his visits. He watched Scout sleeping with his head on my knee, completely relaxed. "And so is he. This is going to make release very difficult, Sarah." "I know," I admitted, running my fingers gently through Scout's fur. "But Marcus, I can't help it. I saved his life. I've been his mother for months now. How do I just stop caring?" Marcus's expression softened. He understood. He'd been through this himself many times. "You don't stop caring. You never stop caring. But you have to love him enough to let him be what he's meant to be. He's not a pet, Sarah. He's a wild bobcat. His place is out there, not in your backyard." I knew he was right, but knowing and accepting are two different things. When Scout was 6 months old, disaster struck. I found him one morning lying in his enclosure, barely moving. His breathing was labored and his eyes were dull. Panic seized me as I rushed him to the veterinarian in Tucson, the nearest one with exotic animal experience. The diagnosis was pneumonia, likely from the dust storms we'd had the previous week. The vet, Dr. Chen, was blunt. "It's serious. Bobcats are tough, but respiratory infections can be fatal, especially in young animals. We need to hospitalize him immediately." I spent 3 days at that clinic, refusing to leave Scout's side. Dr. Chen initially objected, but eventually gave me a cot in the recovery room. I sat by Scout's cage, talking to him softly, reminding him he was a fighter, that he'd survived losing his mother and he could survive this too. On the second night, I thought I'd lost him. His breathing became so shallow I could barely see his chest moving. I opened the cage door and carefully laid my hand on his side, feeling his heartbeat flutter weakly beneath my palm. "Please don't leave me," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Please, Scout. You're so strong. You can fight this. Please." Maybe he heard me. Maybe it was just coincidence. But slowly, over the next hours, Scout's breathing strengthened. By morning, his eyes were brighter. By that afternoon, he was trying to stand. Dr. Chen called it a miracle. I called it Scout's incredible will to live. When I finally brought him home a week later, Scout was thinner and weaker, but alive. He pressed against me in the car, making soft chirping sounds. I realized then just how deeply we'd bonded, how much he trusted me, and I realized how devastating it would be when I had to say goodbye. Marcus began preparing Scout for release when he turned 8 months old. "He's physically ready," Marcus explained. "He's strong, he's got good hunting instincts, and he's the right age. If we wait too long, he'll be too dependent on you." The training intensified. Marcus brought live prey, rabbits and quail, and released them in Scout's enclosure. I had to watch from inside the house as Scout learned to hunt, his instincts sharp and efficient. It was hard to witness, but I understood it was necessary. In the wild, there would be no one to provide him with food. Scout was a natural hunter. Within weeks, his success rate was nearly perfect. He'd stalk, pounce, and dispatch prey with the precision of a wild-born bobcat. Watching him, I felt both pride and sadness. He was becoming exactly what he should be, a capable predator. But that meant he didn't need me anymore. We also began working on his wariness of humans. Marcus would have strangers approach the enclosure, and we'd reward Scout for hiding or showing caution. It broke my heart to teach him to fear people, but it was essential for his survival. Humans were the biggest threat he'd face in the wild. My friend Lisa visited during this period. She'd been skeptical about the whole endeavor from the beginning, but watching Scout move through his enclosure with such power and grace, she was converted. "Sarah, he's magnificent," she breathed. "I can't believe that's the same tiny creature you showed me in photos." "I know," I said quietly, watching Scout climb to the top of his favorite tree. "He's ready, Lisa. He doesn't need me anymore." She put her arm around my shoulders. "Maybe not, But you needed him, didn't you? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The release date was set for mid-October, when Scout was 10 months old. Marcus had identified the perfect location, a remote area of wilderness, with good prey populations, water sources, and minimal human activity. It was about 30 miles from my ranch, far enough that Scout wouldn't try to come back, but close enough that I could check on him occasionally with trail cameras. The night before release, I spent hours sitting in Scout's enclosure. He sensed something was different. Animals always do. He stayed close to me, purring, rubbing against me with his powerful body. He was massive now, nearly 30 pounds of pure muscle and wild grace. "You're going home tomorrow," I told him, my voice breaking. "Real home, where you belong. You're going to be free, Scout. You're going to hunt and explore and live the life you were meant to have." He looked at me with those amber eyes, and I swear he understood. He placed one large paw on my leg, his claws carefully retracted, and made a soft chirping sound. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Marcus arrived with a transport crate. Getting Scout inside was surprisingly easy. He trusted me enough to follow my lead. The drive to the release site was silent except for Scout's occasional calls from the crate. When we reached the designated spot, a beautiful canyon with high rock walls and lush vegetation, my hands shook as I helped Marcus carry the crate. We positioned it facing the wilderness, then stepped back. "You should be the one to open it," Marcus said gently. I knelt beside the crate door, my vision blurred with tears. "Goodbye, Scout," I whispered. "Thank you for letting me be your mom. Be safe, be wild, be free." I opened the door. For a long moment, Scout didn't move. Then he stepped out slowly, looking back at me one last time. The first weeks after Scout's release were the hardest of my life. My house felt unbearably empty without him. I'd catch myself preparing his food before remembering he was gone. At night, I'd wake up thinking I heard his chirping call, only to realize it was just the wind. I checked the trail cameras obsessively. Marcus had helped me set up 4 of them throughout Scout's new territory. For the first few days, there was nothing. My anxiety grew with each empty frame. Had he been injured? Killed by a larger predator? Was he starving because he couldn't hunt effectively in this new environment? Then, on day 5, he appeared on camera. My heart nearly exploded with relief and joy. Scout looked healthy, alert, moving confidently through his new territory. Over the following weeks, the cameras captured him hunting successfully, marking territory, exploring every inch of his new home. He was thriving. I should have been purely happy, and part of me was. But another part felt a grief so deep it physically hurt. I'd done everything right. Raised him, prepared him, released him. But that didn't make missing him any easier. Emma visited that month. She found me sitting in Scout's empty enclosure, just staring at nothing. "Mom, you did an amazing thing," she said, sitting beside me. "You saved his life and gave him freedom. That's love, real love. Then why does it hurt so much? Because love always hurts when we have to let go. But you did the right thing. You know you did." I knew she was right, but knowledge didn't fill the Scout-shaped hole in my heart. My daily routine became checking cameras, maintaining Scout's old enclosure, even though I knew he'd never return, and trying to find purpose in my suddenly quiet life. 3 months after release, on a cold January morning, I was making coffee when I heard something outside. Not unusual. I lived in wild country, but this sound was different, familiar. I rushed to the window and couldn't believe what I saw. Scout was sitting in my backyard, right outside his old enclosure, looking at the house. My first instinct was to run outside, but Marcus's warnings echoed in my mind. If he comes back, you cannot reinforce that behavior. He needs to stay wild. You have to scare him away. But I couldn't do it. I stood frozen, watching this magnificent bobcat, who I'd raised from a helpless cub. He looked healthy, even bigger than when I'd released him, his winter coat thick and beautiful. He sat there for nearly an hour while I watched from inside, tears streaming down my face. Finally, he stood, looked at the house one more time, and disappeared into the wilderness. I called Marcus immediately. He came back. "Did you interact with him?" "No, I just watched from inside." "Marcus, he looks so healthy, so strong." "Good. That's good, Sarah." He paused. "He was probably just checking in, making sure you're okay. Bobcats have excellent spatial memory. He knows exactly where he came from. But the fact that he left on his own is a good sign. It means he's truly wild now." Over the next months, Scout visited occasionally, always briefly, always keeping his distance. Each visit was a gift, proof that he was surviving and thriving. But they were also bittersweet reminders of what we'd shared and what could never be again. I learned to cherish these moments without trying to reclaim them. Scout was wild now, and that was exactly as it should be. It happened in late spring, 14 months after Scout's release. A severe storm system moved through the region, bringing flash floods and dangerous conditions. I'd been monitoring the weather obsessively, worried about all the wildlife, but especially about Scout. The third day of storms, I heard frantic sounds outside my door. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Scout was there, but he wasn't alone. He was carrying something in his mouth, a young bobcat kitten, maybe 6 weeks old, soaking wet and barely moving. Scout placed the kitten at my feet, looked up at me, and made that same chirping call he used to make when he wanted my help. I stood in shock. Scout backed away a few steps, waiting. The kitten mewed weakly. Scout, what happened? Where's the mother? As if in answer, Scout turned and disappeared into the storm. Minutes later, he returned with another kitten, then a third. 3 tiny, half-drowned bobcat kittens now sat on my porch crying for help. Understanding dawned. Somewhere out there, a mother bobcat had lost her babies in the floods. Maybe she'd died. Maybe they'd been separated. Somehow, Scout had found them. And instead of seeing them as threats or prey, he'd brought them to the one place he knew they'd be safe. He'd brought them to me. I gathered the kittens carefully, taking them inside to warm them. When I looked back, Scout was watching from the edge of the yard. Our eyes met across the distance. "Thank you," I whispered. "I understand. I'll take care of them." He turned and vanished into the rain. I didn't see him again for months. Raising 3 bobcat kittens simultaneously was chaos. I'd named them Storm, River, and Rain, after the conditions that brought them to me. Marcus helped again, and this time we had a plan from the beginning. Working with the kittens, I realized how much I'd learned from raising Scout. I knew their needs instinctively, understood their behaviors, could read their moods. It was Scout's legacy, knowledge he'd given me through our time together. The kittens thrived. They were different from Scout in temperament, more timid, more truly wild from the start. They'd never fully trust me the way Scout had, and that was good. It meant they'd transition to freedom more easily. I set up cameras throughout my property, hoping to catch glimpses of Scout. He appeared occasionally, always at the edges, always watching. It was as if he was checking on his rescue, making sure the kittens were safe. One remarkable day, when the kittens were about 4 months old and playing in their enclosure, Scout appeared on the far side of the fence. The kittens froze, instinctively recognizing a full-grown bobcat, but Scout didn't show aggression. He watched them for several minutes, then looked toward the house, toward me standing at the window. I swear he nodded before disappearing. "He's teaching them," Marcus said when I showed him the camera footage. "He's letting them see what they'll become." "Sarah, this is remarkable. I've never seen behavior quite like this." The kittens were released that fall, in the same area where Scout lived. I worried they might not survive. 3 young bobcats competing with an established male for territory. But Scout surprised me again. The cameras showed him watching over them from a distance, not threatening, almost protective. 2 years after Scout's original release, something changed. He started appearing at my property more frequently, and something about his behavior worried me. He seemed thinner, moved with a slight limp, spent more time resting than exploring. I called Marcus. "Something's wrong. I can feel it." We set up a humane trap with fresh meat. It took 3 days, but Scout finally entered it. When we examined him, my worst fears were confirmed. Scout had been injured, an old wound on his rear leg that had become infected. Without treatment, it would likely kill him. "We can treat this," Dr. Chen said after examining him, "but it's going to require surgery and several weeks of recovery. He'll need to stay confined." So Scout came home, not as a pet returning, but as a wild patient in need of medical care. I set him up in a recovery enclosure, kept my distance as much as possible, fought every instinct to cuddle and comfort him the way I wanted to. The surgery was successful. As Scout healed over the following weeks, something beautiful happened. He seemed to understand that I was helping him. He'd look at me with those amber eyes, and I'd see recognition, gratitude, trust, but he never tried to behave like a pet. He remained wild, just temporarily accepting my help. Emma visited during his recovery. "Mom, do you realize what you've done? You raised a wild bobcat who still trusted you enough to let you help when he needed it. That's extraordinary. When Scout was finally healed, the vet cleared him for release. This time felt different. This time, I knew he'd be okay. This time, I knew he'd come back if he needed me. I opened his crate in the same location as before. Scout paused at the entrance, turned back, and touched his nose to my hand. 5 years after I first found Scout, my life had settled into a new rhythm. I'd become a licensed wildlife rehabilitator myself, working under Marcus's mentorship. My property had become a haven for injured and orphaned wildlife. I'd helped dozens of animals over the years, foxes, coyotes, even a young mountain lion once. But Scout remained special. He still visited occasionally, always briefly, always wild. Sometimes I'd catch him on cameras with a female, and once with kittens of his own. Seeing him as a father filled me with indescribable pride. Then, one morning in early spring, I found something on my porch that took my breath away. Scout was there, and he'd brought me a gift, a freshly killed rabbit, still warm. In the wild, this was a behavior mother bobcats taught their young. It was how they showed family members they cared, how they provided for those they loved. Scout was treating me like family. I stood at the door, tears flowing freely, as Scout watched me from a distance. He made that old familiar chirping sound, the one he'd used as a kitten when he wanted my attention. "Thank you, Scout," I called softly. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for being you." He sat there in the morning light, this magnificent wild bobcat I'd raised, who'd grown into everything he was meant to be. Then he did something I'll never forget. He slowly closed his eyes and opened them again, the cat version of a kiss, a sign of trust and affection. Then he turned and walked into the wilderness, confident and free. I never tried to make Scout a pet. I gave him something better, the freedom to be wild while knowing he always had a safe place to return if he needed it. And he gave me something precious too, the honor of being trusted by something truly wild, the joy of watching him thrive, and the knowledge that love doesn't mean possession. It means letting go while keeping the door open. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I raised a Bobcat Cub who grew up to teach me the true meaning of unconditional love. Every time he visits, every glimpse I catch on camera, every sign that he's thriving in the wild, reminds me that the greatest gift we can give those we love is the freedom to become who they're meant to be. Scout is wild. Scout is free. Scout is exactly where he belongs. And sometimes, just sometimes, he comes home to say hello. That's more than I ever dreamed possible, and it's absolutely everything I needed.